Fascinating Gemara that we're going to be learning. And okay, so we're learning Le'ila Nishma, Steve's mother, Esther Bas Avram, Ruach Hashem Tanecheinu Began Eden. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Shomer Shav and Aliyah.
Amen.
Yeah. So we're going to learn some nice. I mean, this is like the Gemara that's full of advice and practical statements. Okay, so we're learning over here Daf Kuf Yud Gimel, first line from the top. Amalei Rav Ravasi. Rav says to Ravasi, Loitoder, do not live b'masa in a city, the Loitzaref Bosusya, that does not have a horse. And the reason is that a horse was a sign of Shmira. In other words, if there was a Geneva or something that happened in the city, the horse was the way to travel and catch up with the people who were Ganavim. So he's saying, don't live in a city that does not have a horse. And it's like in our state, in our parlance, it would probably be, don't live in a city that they doesn't have like Hatzalah or a hospital or ambulances nearby. But like Novach Bo Kalba, and that there's no dogs there. Same idea. Val Toda Be'ir, and don't live in a city. The Reish Masa, that the mayor of the city, is Asya, a doctor. Now, why shouldn't you live in the city where the mayor of the city is a doctor? So he says over here, the Rashbam says, he's so busy being a doctor, he can't do the job of being the mayor of the city. So if you could tell me, then if that's the case, because he's so busy, then why not don't live in a city that the head of the guy is a businessman? Why a doctor, if the doctor is a mayor, you're saying it's not a good idea because he's not focused on the needs of the community. But it could be a guy who has a business and he's a top, he has a top business, so therefore he should either be the leader of the city.
And you would think a poor man too shouldn't be because he's too busy trying to make a living and not taking care of the city.
Right. So you need somebody in the middle. But I guess they say that a doctor, because he's so knowledgeable in health, he's going to be more conservative in reaching out and in managing the affairs of the city because he's always protecting his health. But it could be that's the reason why I don't live in a city that the head guy is a doctor. There are other pshatim here, but that's the pashat pshat. Then it says, don't marry two wives. In the olden times, it was permitted to marry two wives. Don't marry two wives because they could gang up against you. But if you do marry two wives, in the safe class, marry a third one, because the third one won't join the group. Right? If they gang up against you, the third one will tell you. You see, because you see what's happening to Cuomo now. They're all ganging up against him.
That's because you shouldn't do things in pairs. So
in pairs. That's a good point. Because that was one of the reasons why I saw one of the Mefarshim said, don't marry two wives, because then you have zugos, a problem. Because if you marry one wife, it's not a zug, because you're one with your wife, so that's considered one. But if you marry two, that's a zugos problem, and that's good, very good. That's what they say. Marry three. All right. Amalei Rav LeRav Kahana. Rav said to Rav Kahana, he told him the beauty of making a living. A person has to make a living, no matter what kind of job you end up with. First he says, first, rather turn over a carcass, right? And do something that's very heavy and degrading on your body, taxing on your body, but don't turn around your words. If you commit to do something, do it. A person, commits to something, and the first sign of an excuse, he looks to get out of it. So he says, if you have to turn over a carcass, but don't turn over your words. Then he says, this is what I mean. I want you to skin a nevela, a carcass in the street, means skinning an animal, which is a degrading job, ushkel agra, but earn a living. And do not say kahana ana. My name is kahana. The garava rabba ana, and I am a gavra rabba means a great person. The sanya be milsi, and this is too degrading for me, because at the end of the day, the people who end up taking even the menial jobs end up having a better self-esteem than somebody who just refuses to go to work and till he finds the right panasa. And he may never find the right panasa. You got to try it. And even if it means p'shayt nivel tov, you still should take and make a wage. Very, very important. This generation, people end up learning a little bit too long. And then when it comes time to actually work for somebody, it's very difficult for them. You spent couple of years in Kailo, and then it's very hard to go work for somebody because all those couple of years you didn't work for anybody. Nobody told you what to do. Anyway, that's what Rav said to Rav Kahana. Now the Gemara says he also told Rav Kahana, if you go to the roof, take your food with you. In other words, if you go on a little trip, even with a train, you never know when you get stuck. Take some food with you. Even mea kariba masa bezuza, even if you could get 10 gourds, 10 pieces of squash in the city for a zuz, you should still have a little of the squash or the cucumbers with you. In other words, you can't say to yourself, okay, when I get there, I'll buy the food. When you travel, always travel with food. That's a very important point. You never know if you get stuck. You should always have food with you, no matter how cheap it is when you get there. Amalei Rav l'chia berei. Rav said to Chia, his son. Chia, we saw, is Rav's son. Loi tishtei sama. Don't drink, what he's trying to say, don't drink medicine. In other words, if you can get away from drinking medicine, try it, because there's a lot of side effects, and also there's an addictive power to it. And therefore, look what the Rav says. Like tishti sama, al tishti stama, don't drink medicines, but they should nikla veset, because they bring out a time period in you. They that your heart is going to want it, the tafsid mois, and you're going to lose money. Even if it kills you, loy tishti, don't drink it. And efshel refu acheres, if you could do something else, the whole codeine stuff. Then he told him, V'loy tishva nigra, v'loy tishva nigra, v'loy taker kaka. So tishva nigra means don't take large steps. I don't know what that means, but psia gasa makes you a little bit lose your eyesight. Okay? Now, or don't jump so much. And then he says, don't pull a tooth. I guess when you pull a tooth, v'loy taker kaka, don't pull a tooth if you don't have to, because it probably leads to infections, and try to keep the tooth, and even if it's a little bit painful. Like the kane bechivya, don't incite, don't chepa, don't instigate a fight with a snake. Like the kane, don't incite ba'armo a goy, because when you start up a little bit with a goy, it's not good. Torah Rabban rabbis taught gimel ein miskanim behem. Three things you're not supposed to incite a fight with. The Eluhain, these following are they: goy, katan, a small goy, because eventually he can grow up. I think some of the Nazi leaders had a background that when they were very young, they were taunted by some Jewish kids, and they always remembered that. The Nachash Katan, a small snake. Don't taunt a small snake. The Talmud Katan, a small student, because the small student will become a Rebbe one day. My timer, the Malchusa Achare Udnaihu. Their kingdom is behind their ears. It's koi. It means they soon, before you know it, they could become king and they'll take revenge. The Gemara continues. I love this Gemara over here, right here. Amalei Rav, one of the greatest Amoraim is Rav. He told L'Aive Brei, to Aive, his son. He said, I tried teaching you Torah, right? V'loy mistaya milsa, I wasn't successful. You don't have the head for learning. So call Agmarach Mila Da'am. I'm going to teach you how to make business. He said like this: Adchala akarach zvin izabech. When your feet have sand on it, sell your wares. In other words, when you come back from a business trip, don't hold on to your wares. Try to sell it as soon as you can. Don't try to convince yourself, oh, the price is going up. If you bought it for business, sell it right away because you bought it to sell and now you can make a profit. Don't think about, let me hold on to it because chances are, if you hold on to it, the price could go down. A new technology comes out. Kol milei zabin, everything you're going to sell is choret. You're going to have regrets anyway. Bar mechamra, except wine. The zabin, you're going to sell it, you'll never regret it because wine has the possibility that it will spoil. So if you sell it, that's okay too. Don't be concerned about it. Then he told him, Sherei kisayech, psach sakayech. In other words, take the money first. If you're selling to a customer, take the money first and then give him the wares. Don't try to sell on credit. Let the guy take it home and try it on. And because first take the money and then you open the sack. That was Rav's advice to his son. And then Kaba Ma'ara V'Lekura Me'igra. I love this. Rather earn a little bit, but you're local, than earn a lot, 10 times more, Me'igra, but you have to go far away. In other words, you have to go to the roof. In other words, if you have to go far away and travel a lot to make a lot of money, even though you make a lot of money, but you should know there's drawbacks to it. The family life suffers, your shemaim suffers. So rather try to do something local and make less. Tamra b'chaluzach, if you have a little extra dates, the base sudana right, run, make bear with it. What he's trying to say is that if you have a little dates, the temptation is to eat it. Rather than eat it, try to invest it right away in making beer and selling it. Vat kama, amaravat plus saw until 3 saw. In other words, if you have a lot of dates, then you can nash a little bit. But if you have just 3 saw, right away try to invest it. And that's what you see. Compound, even if you're investing a little bit, they teach you in school how compounding interest is a very powerful tool to building wealth. Even though you think you're saving just a little bit, 3 saw, what's big deal? But you're saving a little bit, but that adds up. And if you invest it correctly, you have financial security. Amarav Papa. Rapapa said, "Ilav di Ramai Shichra." If I did not have go into the beer business, lo atri, I would not have become wealthy. Even though you could technically become wealthy in any business, but he specifically said his business because you'll see he was able to make his business a certain way that you could apply his lesson from the beer business to whatever business you have. What was his lesson? So the Gemara is going to explain what his lesson was. If I did not go into beer, I wouldn't have become wealthy. It's Rav Chizda said it, not Rav Papa. So either Rav Chizda was in the beer business or Rav Papa was in the beer business. What's the point? My Sudana. Why is a guy who makes beers called Sudana? Rav Chizda soitna, because they had their secret recipe, ugmilas chesodim, and it does chesed. It's healthy. In other words, they had a secret recipe on how to make this beer, and their beer was a healthy type of beer. So they were doing good with their product. So people had good vibes on their product, and they had a secret way of doing it, sort of like Trader Joe's or something like that. Some natural product that they had, and that made them wealthy. So they felt good about the business that they were in. Amar Papa, Whole Foods, basically. Amar Papa, Kol Agav. When you lend money, just always remember Gavyaba. You're gonna have to collect it. It's not something that the guy return it on your own. It's on your own. But Kol Agav Gavyaboya. You're gonna have to collect it. Kol Ashrai. If you sell on credit, Suffolk Ose Suffolk Lies. The guy buys on credit. You don't know if he's gonna come back with the money. If he's not gonna come back with the money. Uda Ose. If he does come back and he starts paying you slowly, Mois Royers Ninu. That's bad money because he's paying you slowly, and the value of money goes down. So be aware when you do that. That's what he says. even though it's a mitzvah to lend people money, but you have to have in the back of your mind that you may not be able to collect the money. Gimel Devarim Om Rabbi Yochanan B'Shum Rab Anshe Yerushalayim. There are three things Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of the people of Jerusalem. Kishati Yotzei L'Melchama, if you're going to war, Al Teitzei B'Rishayim. Don't be the first one to go into the front lines. El Teitzei B'Acharoina, go out and be the last one. Today, Shetikanes B'Rishayna, in case the war goes sour, you'll be able to run back. If you're in the back of the line, you can run back to safety easier. What he's trying to tell you over here, I'm not sure, because that's, how often do you go to war? And second of all, I mean, it seems obvious that who wants to be in the front lines? You get shot at first. I don't know. If you see something, let me know. Then he says, Va'aseh. So this is one thing that Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of the people of Jerusalem. Another thing that people of Jerusalem used to say, Va'aseh Shabbat chachol v'atztarach labriyos. Make your Shabbos a weekday and don't come on to people. In other words, try to preserve having a more toned down type of Shabbos. And probably it means not just Shabbos, but it means a toned down Simcha or a toned down Yom Tov. But you don't have to come on to people, to human beings. They have to give you money to make up for your overspending. I'm not sure how many people who are going to a fancy Pesach program. There is a portion that it's not in should not be in their budget. And therefore, this is what they're trying to tell you. Don't make your Shabbos a weekday and don't come on to people. The having mishtadil, try to busy yourself. In other words, go into a partnership in misha shah masachakas, to whoever the hour is smiling to him. In other words, if you see somebody as somewhat mazeldik, if you get that sense, try to do a business with that. And that will always lead you to good things because his mazel will rub off on yours. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said three things in the name of the people of Jerusalem. Don't do something, and on the other side it says begagois, on the roof because of the story that happened. What he's trying to say is that we know that David and Melech did the sin of Bathsheba because Bathsheba did her bathing on the roof, and David HaMelech saw, and the Aveira that he did with Bathsheba was because he was peeking and looking at what was done, what should have been done in private, but at that time it caught David HaMelech's eyes. Whatever we read in Tanakh, the way it's described as a chait of David HaMelech. But basically is that things that you can do in private, try to do it in private because it leads to bad things. It could be, like, say, people who are very affectionate with their spouse in public. That's not a good thing because it leads to other bad things. Bitcha bagra, if your daughter is of age to get married, do whatever you can to marry her young. Shachra abdecha v'sein lo, free her servant and give it to her. Even if it's not a pasadig shidduch. In other words, your slave is certainly not the right shidduch for your daughter, but the goyish slave for sure not. But if you see that she's getting older, you got to get her married, and even if it's your own slave, give her the freedom to marry your daughter. It's not good for her to be alone. All right, the have a zar. My wife has a friend, and who Nebuch didn't get married, and she's 50, and she just had her baby, of course, through some rabbanim who give a heter, through a sperm bank without a husband, and she just sent out a text last night. She gets a mazel tov. So this is what it is. Unfortunately,
what is the reason for all of this advice that we're getting? What does it tie back to?
It ties back to, the Gemara started off of zugais, that it's zugais. You're not allowed to have, the Gemara asked the question, how can we have dalit kaises? It's a problem of zugais. And then it led into other witchcraft, and then it led into advice about protecting yourself. So once it goes on to advice, it lists number of main advices in number form. We'll see. It will be 4, number 5, five main advices of life.
Okay.
So here he said, Altar Bergurus, Bitcha Shbagra Shachar, and one more a piece of advice. Three things he said. Be careful of your wife from the first son-in-law, because your wife loves the first son-in-law. There's a crush on that first son-in-law. My time, Rav Chisda Bikir Omar Mishum Erva, because there's a problem of arayis with the first son-in-law. Could be lead to erva. Rav Kana Omar Mishum Mammon, she'll spend all your money to be nice to the new son-in-law. And the Gemara says, ha v'ha isnu. Both are absolutely true. That the first son-in-law has the apple is like the apple of the eye to the mother-in-law. Not in my case, though. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Shloisha min chaylei hayla baba. There are three people that guaranteed to get hayla baba. Elohei, these people, Hadar Eretz Yisrael, who survives living in Eretz Yisrael, even though it's difficult. Mamagad the bottom of Talmud Torah. That's if you raise your kids and you send them to yeshiva despite the difficulties and the cost of tuition. And here is another interesting thing. Somebody who's makbid v'amavdil alayayim b'motzoi Shabbos. He makes sure to use nice wine on Motzei Shabbos. Mahi, what does that mean? The Mishayim Mikadusha Lavdalta. He leaves over from Kiddush for Havdalah. In other words, that the fancy wine that he has for Kiddush, he saves a little bit for Havdalah. He doesn't get away using grape juice or chamar because that's a covet for the Shabbos that you start the Shabbos with a nice cup of wine and you end the Shabbos with a nice cup of wine. So that's a very important thing. It's brought in Reb Chaim Kanievsky Sefer. If someone who doesn't have children should be machmir to do Havdalah on wine and will be blessed with children. That's a new book that came out called Zera Shal Kayama, and these are like little schools Reb Chaim Kanievsky said about people who never don't have children. This is one of them. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Shloisha machlos aleim HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chol yom. The three things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu announces them in heaven. In other words, they're like on the honor roll, in so to speak, in God's eyes. Three people are on the honor roll. Not what you think. One of them is Al Ravak, a person who never gets married, Hador B'Krach, who lives in an urban environment, in a city, and he doesn't do any Averis. He's alone for whatever reason, and he's a bachelor, and he doesn't do any Averis. He's not Choyte with the Znus. Val Oni, on a poor person, a poor person that returns the lost object to its owner. He could very well say, I'm poor, let me keep it. And he breaks his own inner feelings to do the mitzvah of a Shabbos Aveda. It's a big thing. That's also a Kadosh Baruch Hu's honor roll, so to speak. Well, and our Kadosh Baruch Hu protects them from azikim. They're beloved by a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Well, also, if you have a rich person, Hama'asa Peiroisa Bitzin gives his 10%, he gives it in private. In other words, he doesn't need his name announced. He gives his tzedakah in private. Even though he probably is tempted to give it in private because he earned the money so hard and he wants the covet that goes along with making the big donation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is more proud of that person if he keeps more bitzina. So the Gemara says, Rav Safra Ravak Hador B'Krachava. Rav Safra was a bachelor that lived in a big city. So he was proud that he never did an Avera. And when he heard what Rabbi Yochanan said, he was so excited. We go to Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Sheni. Tana Kama de Rava, Rav Safra. Tana learned this statement of Rabbi Yochanan in front of Rava and Rav Safra. Saw part of the Rav Safra. So Rav Safra his face lit up. He felt good. But that's not what it means. Amalei Rava said to him, it's not lav kagoymar. You're not on God's honor roll, so to speak. Ella, it means somebody kagoy Rav Chanina of Rav Shaya. It's Rav Chanina and Rav Shaya. The Havel ushkafi ba'ard Yisrael. They were shoemakers in Eretz Yisrael and in Israel. V'avayasu b'shuka designers. And they had to live on a street of Zionists. In other words, you think in Israel they don't have Zionists. They have Zionists. And there are streets dedicated for Zionists. They had a business. They sold shoes to Zionists. And the Zionists would come into their store. So the test was that they were not married for whatever reason. Rav Chanina and Rav Shaya were not married, and they had to deal with Zionus. Inu mistakle b'hu. The Zionists would look at them, the Inu, but Rav Chanina and Rav Shaya loy madlan einai lestukle b'hu. They would not lift their eyes to look at them. And so it's no kunz. You, Rav Safra, probably stayed in the Beis Medrash, never got out in the street, was not challenged in any which way. So although you live in a city, that's not what we're referring to, that you're on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's honor roll. Rav Chanina, Rav Shaya, that had to be, they were constantly being tested because of their business and living on a street of Zionists, and they didn't sin. And not only that, umamsayu hochi, when the Zionists would swear, they would say b'chayei rabbana kadishat bar Yisrael. They would swear in the lives of the holy rabbis of Eretz Yisrael. Even the Zionists appreciated their holiness. Those are the type of people that are part of the Rava Kanimtza Bekrach that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was machris on them, announces and, so to speak, they're on God's honor roll. The Gemara continues. Shloisha HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oivim. There are three people. Now we're going to remember three, and they're going to be four. There are three people that God loves. Vishay Nekoyeth, a person who doesn't get angry, even though he could potentially get angry, he holds himself back. Mishay Nemishtaker, a person who doesn't get drunk. Mamid al midaisim, and a person who does not, he's a forgiving person. He doesn't have to always be right. Even though when he's right, and he could prove that he's right, he doesn't prove that he's right. He lets other people be right. In a conversation, there are certain people that always have to be right, even though they are right. But a guy who's Mamid al midaisim is also somebody who doesn't hold a grudge. Lets other people win. So those are the people HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves. Shloisha HaKadosh Baruch Hu Seidim. There are three people that God hates. The guy who speaks, what do you call it? Cognitive dissonance. He speaks with his mouth and with his heart. In other words, he doesn't speak, he's a faker. He's insincere. And then the second thing, a second type of person God hates, he knows he can help his friend by saying testimony in Besdin with his friend, but that means he has to sit jury duty or whatever it is, and he doesn't. So that person, Kadosh Baruch Hu hates. You have a potential to help somebody, maybe it inconveniences you, but that as a person that Kadosh Baruch Hu hates. And then another person that Kadosh Baruch Hu hates, he sees his fellow doing a little bit something wrong that has to do with snus. Let's say you saw your friend go into a Beis Zionist, made by Yechidin, you go say testimony in Besdin alone. And that's wrong because you're not believed. You're just a one aid. This guy Tuvia did a big avera. Whatever he did, went into a house of ill repute. Vasa Zigud and his friend Zigud saw it, L'chude, he came alone. And he told Rapapa, Tuvia went, did this big avera. Nagde Zigud. So they gave Malchus to Zigud. Amalei. So Tuvia said, Tuvia did the vera. Zigud bin God, and you're going to punish Zigud? What did he do? What did I do? Amalei. So Papa said, yes, in the Ksiv, it says in the Pasuk, if you see somebody doing something wrong, you have no right to repeat it. You're just one aid. You're just one person. The Ksiv, it says in the Pasuk, L'yokum eid echabish. One man is not allowed to say testimony in a person. But l'chudach asad bey, asahadas bey. You said this by yourself. Shem rabba almo makat bey. You're saying a bad name about this person, and therefore it's lashon hara, and you're not allowed to believe it. Amar Rab Shmuel barav Yitzchak Amarav. Nevertheless, if you see somebody do a terrible avera, you see somebody doing not nice things, right? So true, you're not allowed to tell it over to other people because that will be lashon hara. But umuter lisnoisei, it's mutter to hate this person. You could personally hate him because he's throwing away his Yiddishkeit, so to speak. Shenama, because Pasuk gives you an example. The Torah talks about if you see the chamor, the donkey of your enemy, burdened by its loads. It's crouching because it has a heavy load on it. You have to help unload that animal. But what is your enemy? Who is your enemy, right? Who is your enemy? My son, what is called the enemy? If it's your enemy, who's your goy, Well, Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Soine Samri, Soine Yisrael. This Soine that we're talking about is a Soine Yisrael. So it cannot be that is what the pasuk is referring to. It's not a goyish enemy. It's not a person that is a goy. It's a Jew that you hate. So the Gemara asked, if it's a Jew that you hate, can the Torah give an example that you're hating another Jew? Well, there's a pasuk says, you're not allowed to hate your brother in your heart. Ella, there is a time where you're allowed to hate your brother. You saw testimony. Wait, Ella, if it talks about the Ikasadi the Avid Yisura, if you are part of a pair of witnesses that saw him do it, a big Aveira, he was Mazana with an Ashish, then Kuliyama Nama Misnisanale, then everybody's allowed to hate him. It's not you. It's the Torah says, Soin Acho, it's you, only you are allowed to hate this person and nobody else. Why is this person different? That means if you were the only one that saw this person do this big Aveira, true, you can't go to Bezdin and tell anybody about it. It's a personal thing. Presumably, you're not going to give him Musar because he's not going to listen to your Musar, but it's mutter to hate him. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak mitzvah l'snoiseh. It's a mitzvah to hate him. Shnema, because the pasuk says, Yirish Hashem soinei ra. The person who fears God hates somebody that does bad. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Acha berei de Rava Ravashi. Rav Acha, the son of Rava, said to Ravashi, Mahu lemeimer l'rabbi lemisnei. Are you allowed to tell his rabbi to hate him? So let's give the example. A guy sees somebody who's Bazana. So are you allowed to tell the rabbi in the shul about it, that what he did, right? So that the rabbi can hate him, probably give him musa. Amalei iyada, if you know that Hemen the rabbi can betray, that you're the rabbi trusts you as if you're two people, means he has a complete trust in what you're saying. Leimele, you should tell the rabbi. He should be aware of his congregants or his student. Maybe he could protect the other students, and maybe he can give the guy musa to do tshuva. The Eloi, but if your own Rav won't believe you, loy leimele, don't tell him. Taisus points out one thing. Taisus points out that although we say that you're allowed to hate this person, you have to be aware that since you're going to hate this person, he's going to hate you back. And that's going to be, and then it will become to a big sinner. In other words, you have to be aware, although it's permitted to hate this person, you have to understand that this is going to escalate because there's like an energy. When you have a dislike to a person, that person, even though you don't express it, that person feels it. And that's what psychologically Taisa says that. Tanu Rabbanim, the rabbis taught, another 2 minutes here, rabbis taught shloisha, 3 people, chayayim edem chayim. They can't live. They're never relaxed. 3 people. One of the people is harachmanim, a person who always has rachmanis on people. People who are, there are people that read every newspaper and every Jewish newspaper, and they hear this guy died and that guy is not going well, and this guy fell. So they're never relaxed. They have too much rachmanis, and they say, oh, so they have too much sympathy. So they don't have a relaxed life. V'ras chanin, and somebody who's constantly getting, raged and getting fired up. V'anine adas, and somebody who's finicky. In other words, everything has to be perfect. Perfect. V'yamar Rav Yosef says, Kuli isnubi. I have all 3 problems. I have too much mercy on people. I get angry very quickly, and I have to have everything to perfection. If I don't, it bothers me. And Rav Yosef was aware of himself and worked on it. Taner Rabbanim, the rabbis taught shloisha, 3 people, soinin zezeh, 3 types of people hate each other. Eluhein, aklav, dogs hate each other. V'atar negolim, and chickens. V'hachaborim, and these are chaborim are, I'm not sure. What do you have here on the side? Chaborim. I don't know what it doesn't have a taich over here, so I wasn't able to see what this chabar. V'yeshoimim, others say af hazoinus. The zoinus, even though they look like they like each other because they're in the same business, they hate each other. V'yeshoimim, and others say af talmidei chachamim shebababel. Even the talmidei chachamim of Babel, they hate each other because they hate falseness and they're fighting with each other in order to drive at the truth. Tana Rabbanim, the rabbis taught shloisha ayavim zeh. There are three types of people that love each other. Elohein, these are them. Hagerim, gerim. They love each other because they all in the same boat. They the converts have a similar struggle.
It says in the art scroll that Chabarians are people descended from Persians.
Persia, right? That's what I thought. Chabarim are Persians. Keep that open there. What Orvin? Elaine Shloisha Avin says that. Gerim, Avadim, what's Orvin? Orvim are three people that love each other, are converts, servants, slaves, and Orvin are people who steal.
Crows.
Crows. Okay, so it's a bird. That's what I thought. An oiriv. So the Gemara says, the Gemara continues. I don't know. Crows love each other. I gotta pull out some of the old bird National Geographics. Therefore, we're gonna stop in a few minutes. There are four types of people nobody can stand. Elohein dal geya, a poor man that has arrogance. What's he so arrogant about? He's not. He didn't make any. He's not a wealthy person. And a rich person, if you ask him if he lies, in other words, he denies what he committed to. He said he's going to pay the commission. He said he's going to make the donation, and then he denies that he never did it. And it's like disgusting because you could afford it. What are you being such a petty person? V'zokim and oif, an old person that does nus, because you would think if he's old, what are you doing this nus for? There's no taiva. Or parnes misgoyal at tzibur b'chinim, and a guy in charge of the tzibur, he shows haughtiness over the congregation for nothing. Again, nobody likes arrogant people. Others say, guy who divorces his wife, remarries her again, divorces her again, and tries it a third time. So the Tanakama, why did the Tanakama use that example? Zimna the ksubasa miruba. Maybe the reason why he's marrying her again because he realized that the ksuba is so expensive that he'll never be able to pay it out. So he might as well marry her again. Maybe he has kids that then he sees that they need him, so he wants to remarry her again, even if it's for the third time. So we went to Shloisha Abba. Now, number 5. 5 things that Canaan, who's the father of the black people, told his children. And this is you'll see what he told their children. Evu zezeh, you should love one each other. It's a brother is a very black term. Ve'evu es a gezel, or they should love stealing. Ve'evu es a zima loves nus. V'sinu es adanechem, hate your masters, hate your boss. Your boss is always prejudiced against you. Val tadabru emes, don't speak truth. Funny how this was Canaan commanding.
He should have been the head of the Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter. Love each other, love stealing, smashing windows, loves nus, hate boss, and never speak truth. Always twisted.
Amazing. Really is.
Shisha Devarim, two more things, and that's it. Shisha Devarim Nemrim Basus. There's 6 things that said the horse. Oyev es a Zionist. It loves the Zionist. It loves doing nus. But Oyev es a Muhammad loves war. Baruchai Gasa. Horse has a bloated ego. Umayas es a Shena, and it hates sleep. V'oichel harbe, eats a lot. The moitzikima, and gives off a little bit. V'yeshoimim af mevakish laharik bala b'machama. It tries to kill its rider during a war. In other words, if it sees like a female horse, it'll throw its regular, rider off and try to kill him. So these are 6 things that were said by a horse that a person should be aware of. I don't know. Maybe people had horses. And the final thing we'll learn today is Shiva. There are 7 people, Menudin L'Shamayim, means they're excommunicated from heaven. I think this means that their prayers are not heard. They could pray, but it's not heard as well. Elohim, Yehudi she'ein lo isha, a Jew that didn't get married. If he could get married, right, and he just becomes fussy and this and that, and it's his own fault. He has a wife, but he doesn't have children. Again, as Taisus points out, that it doesn't mean that in other words, it's sometimes a person can be married and don't have children.
He chooses not to have.
Chooses to have now. I have a friend my age, but he never had children. Still married to the same wife, but it's painful. And here, this person chooses not to have children. He has boys. He doesn't want to send them to a yeshiva. Doesn't want to teach them Torah. He doesn't have tefillin in his head, with tefillin b'zroya and tefillin on his arm. I think this is why the Lubavitch Rebbe wanted to at least put people have one time in their life have the experience of tefillin. With tzitzis bebigdai, a person should have tzitzis in his clothing, mezuzah b'pischai, and a mezuzah on his door. V'hamaneya bin alim aradlov. Somebody who holds back from buying shoes. He's like, walking around with floppies, so he's a person that's, he's menudin l'shamayim. For whatever reason it is, his prayers are not answered. If there's like a siyum or a bris that we're going to learn about, that there's a bris or he's too busy to attend, So we learned like Taisa says, it's a sudas mila. Yeah, that's why they don't invite people to a Sudas Bris Milah from this Taisus, from this Gemara, because if you don't attend, then if you purposely don't attend and you throw away the invitation, your prayers are not answered. So understandably, if a person can't go, obviously, and he has to leave early, fine. So, but what the Gemara is saying is Menudin Lishmayim. That means you're invited to attend this Chabura Shel Mitzvah, and you don't want to attend. And so we'll stop right over here.
Very good. Very nice. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Okay, very good.
Good. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a
See you
great
tomorrow.
night.
Good night.
Night.